Welcome to Monk's Temple. Let's begin by simply noticing where you are right now. Not just physically, but mentally. There's a texture to this moment. Perhaps you're tired. Perhaps you're curious. Perhaps there's a low hum of anxiety in the background. Whatever it is, just let it be there. No need to change it. No need to judge it. Now I want to invite you to consider something that might feel uncomfortable. It's an idea that mystics and philosophers have whispered for thousands of years, but it was the Buddha who turned it into a precise psychological tool. The idea is this: the universe, in and of itself, has no meaning. No purpose. No inherent direction. When we first hear this, something in us recoils. We want there to be a reason. We want to believe our struggles and victories are part of some grand cosmic narrative. This desire for a pre-written story is one of the deepest cravings of the human heart. It's the wish to be held by something larger, to know our existence matters in the eyes of the universe. But here's the psychological insight the Buddha offers: that very wish, as comforting as it seems, is actually a cage. Because if the universe has a purpose that includes your suffering, then your suffering is mandatory. If your pain is part of the plan, resignation becomes your only option. The Buddha looked at this and said, no. That's not freedom. That's just another form of bondage. Instead, he described a cosmos that operates like a vast, impersonal process. Worlds forming and dissolving. Beings wandering from one existence to another. Not because someone is directing traffic, but because there's a simple mechanical law at work: craving leads to becoming, becoming leads to birth, birth leads to suffering. It's not personal. It's just how things work. Think of it like weather. A hurricane doesn't form because it's angry. A flower doesn't bloom because it's trying to be beautiful. They're just following natural laws of cause and effect. The Buddha said the same is true of our lives. There's no hidden author writing your story. There's just cause and effect playing out, moment after moment, based on your intentions and choices. Now for a moment, just feel the psychological weight of that. No cosmic scorekeeper. No destiny you're supposed to fulfill. No secret meaning you need to decode. At first this can feel like falling. Like the floor has been pulled out from under you. But if you stay with that feeling, something begins to shift. The falling transforms into something else. It becomes freedom. Because if the universe has no inherent purpose, then purpose is not something you find. It's something you make. Meaning is not hidden in the world waiting to be discovered like buried treasure. Meaning is something you create, moment by moment, through the choices you make and the intentions you hold. This is the radical shift the Buddha invites us into. He's not offering a doctrine to believe. He's offering a method for reclaiming your own authority. He's saying the cosmos is vast and purposeless. That's not a problem. That's an opportunity. You get to decide. You get to choose what matters. You get to define what a meaningful life looks like. And here's where it gets interesting. The Buddha doesn't just say choose whatever you want. He says based on his own investigation, there's one choice that's better than all others. One purpose that actually leads to lasting fulfillment. One goal that once achieved ends the need for any further goals. That purpose is the end of suffering. Not the management of suffering. Not the temporary relief. Not the distraction from suffering. The complete irreversible end of suffering. You might hear that and think it sounds noble but impossibly distant. How does ending suffering fit into your Tuesday afternoon? This is where the Buddha's genius becomes clear. He didn't teach a philosophy to believe. He taught a practice to engage in. And that practice starts exactly where you are, right now, with whatever is arising in this moment. There was once an architect who designed magnificent buildings. Skyscrapers that touched clouds. Museums that became destinations. He was known for his perfectionism. But as he grew older, a strange thing happened. He would finish a building, attend a grand opening, accept the applause. And then driving home that night, he would feel nothing. Just hollow emptiness. The building that consumed 2 years of his life was now just done. He started to wonder what it was all for. The buildings would eventually be torn down. His name would be forgotten. If the purpose of his life was to create these structures, and the structures were impermanent, then wasn't his purpose just a temporary illusion? One day a young intern asked him how he knew when a design was finished. The architect opened his mouth to give his standard answer. But instead something else came out. He said, "You never know. You just stop. You stop because the deadline comes. But the design is never finished. It's only abandoned." In that moment he saw it clearly. He had been looking for completion in the buildings. He thought the purpose was the finished product. But the product was always temporary. The purpose, he realized, had been in the designing itself. The absorption. The problem solving. The quiet focus of the drafting table. That was the part that was real. He didn't need to build another building. He needed to recognize that the building was just the excuse. The real work was the attention he brought to the act of creation. This is what the Buddha means by the handful of leaves. The architect was looking at the forest, the legacy, the fame, the impermanent structures. The Buddha points to the leaf in your hand, the quality of your attention, the intention behind your action, the moment-to-moment experience of being alive. That's where meaning is actually found. If this way of looking at the mind speaks to you, please consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. We create these reflections every week to help you navigate the inner landscape. Hit the subscribe button below and let's continue this journey together. Now let's go back to that forest near Kosambi, because there's more wisdom in that handful of leaves than first appears. The Buddha is walking with his monks. He picks up a few leaves and asks the famous question, which are more numerous, the leaves in his hand or the leaves in the entire forest? The monks answer correctly. The forest leaves are far more numerous. And the Buddha says, in the same way, what I have directly known but not taught is as vast as the forest. What I have taught you is only this handful. But here's what we often miss. He's not just saying he's withholding information. He's making a profound statement about the human mind and its relationship to knowledge. He's saying that most of what we could know is irrelevant to the one project that actually matters. The project of freeing ourselves from suffering. Think about your own mind for a moment. How much of your mental energy is spent on questions that have no bearing on your immediate experience? How often do you get caught up in speculation about the future? How often do you replay the past, analyzing what you could have done differently? How often do you worry about what other people think of you? These are all leaves in the forest. They're vast, they're numerous, and they're mostly irrelevant to the task at hand. The Buddha is inviting us to stop wandering through the forest and instead look closely at the leaf in our own hand. What is that leaf? It's your direct experience, right now. It's the sensation of breathing. It's the quality of your attention. It's the feeling tone of this moment, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That's it. That's the handful. Everything else is commentary. Now, this isn't to say that planning for the future is wrong or reflecting on the past is useless. Of course, we need to do those things. But the Buddha is pointing out that most of our mental activity isn't purposeful planning or helpful reflection. It's rumination. It's worry. It's fantasy. It's the mind running on autopilot, generating story after story, and we believe every single one of them. The psychological insight here is profound. The mind creates suffering not because the world is difficult, but because the mind is addicted to its own narratives. It can't leave experience alone. It has to comment on it, judge it, compare it, want it to be different. And that commenting, that judging, that wanting, that's the origin of stress. This is why the Buddha's teaching is so minimal. He doesn't give us a cosmology to believe in. He doesn't give us a theology to defend. He gives us a diagnosis and a prescription. The diagnosis. There is stress. The cause, craving. The cure, the cessation of craving. The path, an eightfold path of ethical living, mental training, and wisdom. That's the handful. Everything else is just elaboration. I once heard about a journalist who had spent 40 years covering wars, disasters, political upheavals. He had seen more human suffering than most of us can imagine. He had files and files of notes, photographs, interview recordings. His apartment was an archive of pain. When he retired, he couldn't stop. He kept collecting. Every news story, every tragedy, he would clip it, file it, add it to the growing collection. His wife would find him at 3 a.m., scrolling through old footage, making notes. She asked him why. He said, because someone needs to remember. Someone needs to bear witness. If I stop, it's like it never happened. But the collection was consuming him. His health declined. His relationships withered. He was carrying the weight of the world's suffering, and it was crushing him. Finally, a friend convinced him to see a therapist. The therapist listened to his story, then asked a simple question: "What are you trying to accomplish with this collection?" The journalist said, "I want to make sure it matters. I want to make sure they're not forgotten." The therapist nodded. "And has it worked? Do you feel that it matters? Do you feel they're not forgotten?" The journalist was silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, "No. I just feel tired." The therapist said, "You're trying to hold the ocean in a cup. The suffering of the world is infinite. Your capacity to hold it is finite. You're not failing because you're not strong enough. You're failing because the task is impossible." The journalist needed to hear that. He had confused the forest with the leaf. He thought his purpose was to bear witness to everything, to hold all the suffering, to make sure nothing was forgotten. But that purpose was impossible. It was based on a misunderstanding. He was trying to do the universe's job. His real work, the therapist suggested, was much smaller. It was to be present with his own experience, to tend to his own heart, to care for the people right in front of him. The suffering of the world would continue with or without his archive. But his own life, his own moment-to-moment experience, that was his responsibility. That was the leaf in his hand. It took him a long time to let go of the archive. But slowly, painfully, he did. And in its place, he found something he hadn't felt in decades, the simple pleasure of sitting on his porch, watching the sunset, with nothing to collect, nothing to file, nothing to remember. Just the sunset. Just the moment. Just the leaf. This is the invitation for all of us. What archives are you carrying? What vast collections of worry, regret, and rumination are you hauling around, believing they're your responsibility? The Buddha invites you to put them down. Just for a moment. Just to see what it feels like. The forest will still be there. But your handful of leaves, this breath, this moment, this awareness, that's where your real work begins. This brings us to a question that might be forming in your mind. If the universe has no purpose and we're free to choose our own meaning, doesn't that just lead to chaos? If I choose to make money my purpose, or pleasure my purpose, or power my purpose, who's to say that's wrong? This is an important question, and the Buddha's answer is both subtle and practical. He doesn't say there are no standards. He says the standards are not imposed from above. They're discovered through investigation. We don't need a cosmic authority to tell us that certain choices lead to suffering and others lead to peace. We can see this for ourselves if we're honest and if we pay attention. This is where the psychological framework becomes so powerful. The Buddha is essentially offering us a laboratory, and the laboratory is our own mind. We can test things. We can try making money our primary purpose and see what happens. Does it lead to lasting satisfaction? Or does it just create more craving, more anxiety, more comparison with others? We can try making pleasure our purpose and see where that goes. Does pleasure ever satisfy completely? Or does it just create a hunger for more intense, more frequent pleasure? We can try making power our purpose. Does power bring peace? Or does it bring paranoia, isolation, the constant fear of losing what you've gained? The Buddha isn't asking us to take his word for it. He's inviting us to look, to investigate, to see for ourselves. And he claims that if we look deeply and honestly enough, we'll all come to the same conclusion: the only purpose that doesn't eventually disappoint, the only goal that doesn't create more suffering in the pursuit of itself, is the goal of freedom from suffering. Now this doesn't mean we can't enjoy pleasure, or earn money, or exercise influence. Of course we can. The question is, what's our relationship to these things? Are they ends in themselves? Or are they simply part of the landscape of our lives while our deeper purpose remains the training of the mind? This distinction is crucial. The Buddha isn't advocating for a life of deprivation. He's advocating for a life of freedom. And freedom doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from understanding the nature of wanting itself. There was a chef who ran a famous restaurant. She was known for her soups. People would come from other cities just to taste her broth. She had won awards. She had been written up in magazines. Her soups were her identity. But over time something shifted. She stopped tasting the soup. She would make it, but she was already thinking about the next pot. She would serve it, but she was already worrying about the reviews. The soup had become a means to an end, the awards, the reputation, the income, rather than an end in itself. One night after a particularly stressful service, she sat down in the empty dining room with a bowl of her signature soup. She looked at it. She smelled it. She took a spoonful. And for the first time in years, she actually tasted it. It was good. Really good. And in that moment she realized what she had lost. She had been so focused on what the soup could get her that she had forgotten the soup itself. The purpose of making soup, she remembered, was to make good soup. That was it. The awards were just byproducts. The reputation was just a shadow. The soup was the thing. She didn't close the restaurant. She didn't stop caring about her customers. But she changed her relationship to her work. Every pot of soup became its own purpose. Every spoonful became an opportunity to be present. The awards still came, but they didn't matter the same way. The stress didn't disappear, but it no longer defined her. This is the shift the Buddha is pointing to. The problem isn't the activity. The problem is the craving that turns the activity into a means of becoming something other than what you are. A father took his daughter to the Grand Canyon. It was a trip he had planned for years, saving money, imagining the moment. When they finally stood at the edge, looking out at that vast expanse of color and light, his first instinct was to reach for his phone. He needed to capture it. Needed to have proof that they were there. He spent the next 10 minutes positioning his daughter, adjusting the light, taking shot after shot. She stood there patiently, smiling when asked, waiting. Finally he got the perfect photo. He looked at it on his screen, satisfied. A moment preserved forever. Later that night, scrolling through the photos in their hotel room, his daughter asked a question that stopped him cold. "Daddy, what did the canyon look like?" He opened his mouth to describe it. And realized he couldn't. He had been so focused on photographing it that he had never actually seen it. He had the proof. But he had missed the experience. The purpose of the trip, he thought, was to get the photos. To have something to show people. To prove they had been there. But standing in that hotel room, looking at his daughter's face, he understood. The purpose was to stand together at the edge of something magnificent and just stand there. Present. Together. Without the phone. Without the proof. Just the moment. He had confused the forest with the leaf. The photos were the forest. The standing there, the seeing, the being together, that was the leaf. And he had dropped it to grab at something that could never satisfy. The chef had confused the awards with the soup. The father had confused the photos with the canyon. And we do this every day. We trade the real for the representation. The experience for the evidence. The leaf for a picture of the leaf. The Buddha's invitation is simple: put down the phone. Taste the soup. Feel this breath. This is not practice for living. This is living itself. Now we need to talk about desire. Because desire is the engine of everything we've been discussing. Desire drives us to create purposes, to seek meaning, to build identities. And desire is also, according to the Buddha, the source of all our suffering. This can sound confusing. If desire causes suffering and we need desire to practice the path, aren't we just using one desire to fight another? Isn't that swapping one addiction for another? The Buddha anticipated this question. He made a crucial distinction between two kinds of desire. One he called tanha, which is often translated as craving. This is the desire that grasps, that clings, that says, I must have this to be happy. It's the desire of addiction. It comes from a sense of lack, a feeling that something is missing, and that if we could just get the right object, the right relationship, the right job, the right experience, we would finally be complete. The other kind of desire he called chanda. This is the desire to do, to accomplish, to create. It's the energy behind the path. It's the intention to develop skillful qualities and abandon unskillful ones. It's the wish to be free. The difference isn't in the feeling of desire itself. Both involve wanting. The difference is in the relationship to the wanting. Craving is desperate. It's contracted. It's based on a lie, the lie that something outside yourself can complete you. Chanda is relaxed. It's spacious. It's based on the truth that you already have everything you need to do this work, and the desire is simply the energy to apply yourself. Think of it like this. Craving is like being in a burning building and desperately grabbing onto anything that might save you. Chanda is like calmly deciding to build a fire escape, even though it will take time and effort, because you know it will lead to lasting safety. One is a reaction. The other is a response. One is driven by fear. The other is driven by wisdom. This distinction is psychologically essential because it helps us work with our desires rather than against them. So many spiritual paths teach that desire is the enemy, that we must eliminate all wanting. But that's impossible. Wanting is built into the fabric of consciousness. Even the wish to eliminate desire is itself a desire. The Buddha's approach is more sophisticated. He says don't fight desire. Understand it. See the difference between desires that lead to more suffering and desires that lead to freedom. And then intentionally cultivate the desires that are helpful. There was a young musician, a pianist, who was incredibly talented. From the age of 5, he had practiced hours every day. He won competitions. He played with orchestras. He was on his way to a brilliant career. But he had a problem. Every time he performed, he was terrified. Not just nervous, terrified. His hands would shake. His mind would race. He would make mistakes he never made in practice. The terror came from one place, the audience. He was desperate for their approval. He needed them to like him, to applaud, to validate his years of work. Their judgment felt like a matter of life and death. He tried everything. Therapy. Medication. Meditation. Nothing worked. The fear was too deep. One day an old teacher gave him some strange advice. For your next concert, the teacher said, I want you to do something different. I want you to play for the piano. The musician was confused. Play for the piano? The piano is an instrument. It doesn't have ears. Just try it, the teacher said. The next concert, the musician walked on stage, sat down, and looked at the piano. He thought about all the hours they had spent together, just the two of them. The piano had never judged him. It had never withheld its voice. It had always been there, ready to respond to his touch. He began to play. And for the first time in his memory, he wasn't performing. He was just playing. With the piano. For the piano. The audience was there, but they weren't the point. The point was the relationship between his fingers and the keys, the vibration of the strings, the sound filling the hall. At the end there was applause. He heard it, but it felt different. It wasn't a verdict. It was just a sound. The approval he had craved for so long was finally there, but he no longer needed it. He had found a different kind of desire, not the craving for validation, but the simple joy of making music. A marathon runner had one goal: to break 3 hours. He trained for years, sacrificing time with family, missing social events, pushing through injuries. Every run, every workout, every meal was measured against that goal. 3 hours. That was the purpose. The day of the marathon came. He ran hard. He paced perfectly. He gave everything he had. And he crossed the finish line in 2 hours and 59 minutes. He had done it. He had achieved his purpose. And then he sat on the curb and cried. Not from joy. From emptiness. The goal that had consumed him for years was now gone. Reached. Finished. And in its absence, there was nothing. He didn't know who he was without the chase. It took him a long time to understand what had happened. He had confused the finish line with the running. He thought the purpose was the achievement. But the purpose had actually been the training, the striving, the daily discipline of showing up. That was the part that gave his life meaning. The finish line was just a moment. The running was the real thing. He started running again, but differently. Not for time. Not for records. Just to run. Just to feel his legs move, his lungs fill, his heart beat. He had transformed craving into chanda. The desperate need for a result had become the simple joy of the activity itself. This is the shift available to all of us. Not to stop wanting, but to want differently. To want the right things in the right way. To want freedom more than we want approval. To want presence more than we want achievement. To want the soup more than we want the award. That's the path. That's the practice. That's the leaf. So how do we actually make this shift? How do we move from craving to chanda, from desperate grasping to wise aspiration? This is where the Buddha's path becomes practical, step by step, utterly down to earth. The first step is always ethics. This might seem unrelated to the lofty goal of ending suffering, but the Buddha saw it as foundational. Why? Because the mind cannot settle into the kind of deep concentration required for insight if it's agitated by guilt, by remorse, by the fallout of unskillful actions. Think of it like this. If you're trying to grow a garden, you need to prepare the soil. You need to remove the rocks, pull the weeds, enrich the ground. Ethics is that preparation. It's the work of clearing the field so that something beautiful can grow. The Buddha's ethical teachings are not commandments. They're recommendations based on cause and effect. He says, look, if you act in certain ways, if you kill, steal, lie, harm others through sexual misconduct, or intoxicate yourself, you will create consequences that disturb your peace of mind. You will have to deal with guilt, with fear of being caught, with the complicated aftermath of your actions. All of that is agitation. All of that makes it harder to sit still and know your own mind. On the other hand, if you act with kindness, with honesty, with respect for yourself and others, your mind becomes lighter. There's less to regret. Less to hide. Less to worry about. The soil is prepared. The mind can begin to settle. This isn't about being good to earn a reward. It's about creating the internal conditions for peace to arise naturally. There was an accountant who worked for a small company. He was meticulous, careful, proud of his accuracy. But one year, under pressure of a deadline, he made a mistake. A small one. He misclassified a few $1,000s. It wasn't fraud. It was just an error. But he noticed it after the reports were filed, and he said nothing. At first it was fine. No one noticed. The error was buried in the numbers. But something had changed inside him. Every time he walked into the office, he felt a small weight. Every time he talked to his boss, he wondered if she knew. Every time he closed his eyes at night, his mind would drift to that error, that moment of silence, that choice not to speak. He started sleeping poorly. He became irritable with his family. He lost focus at work, which led to more errors, more anxiety. His life was contracting around this one small mistake. Finally he couldn't take it anymore. He went to his boss, confessed the error, and offered to fix it however he could. His boss was surprised. She hadn't noticed, but she appreciated his honesty. They corrected the report. It was done. That night the accountant went home and slept for 12 hours straight. The weight was gone. The mind had been cleared. This is the power of ethics. It's not about being perfect. It's about not carrying unnecessary burdens. The accountant's mistake was minor. But the secrecy, the fear, the hiding, that was the real weight. That's what disturbed his peace. When we live with integrity, we're not being good for the sake of some external judge. We're being good for the sake of our own minds. We're creating the conditions for peace to be possible. We're removing the rocks from the soil so the garden can grow. A salesman had a standard pitch. It worked. He was good at his job. But the pitch contained a small lie. Nothing major. Just a slight exaggeration about what the product could do. Every client heard it. Every client believed it. And every client, eventually, discovered the truth. He never got in trouble. The product was still good enough that people didn't complain. But he noticed something. He started dreading follow-up calls. He avoided clients after the sale. He would see their names on his caller ID and feel a small flutter of anxiety. One day a client he particularly liked called. They had become friendly over the months. The client said, "You know that feature you promised? It doesn't actually work that way. I figured it out. It's fine, I still like the product. But I wanted you to know." The salesman hung up and sat at his desk for a long time. He realized he had been poisoning his own mind. The lie had saved him a few seconds in the pitch. But it had cost him months of peace. Every client he lied to became someone he had to avoid. Every relationship became a source of anxiety rather than connection. He changed his pitch the next day. He told the truth. The whole truth. Some clients walked away. But the ones who stayed, he could call them anytime. He could answer their calls without dread. He could be present with them without a hidden agenda. The weight lifted. Not because he had become a better person in some moral sense. Because he had stopped creating reasons for his own mind to be disturbed. He had cleared the soil. This is the first step. Not glamorous. Not exciting. Just the quiet work of living with integrity. Of telling the truth. Of keeping your promises. Of cleaning up your messes. It's not about being perfect. It's about not carrying what you don't need to carry. The mind is light when it has nothing to hide. The soil is ready when the rocks are removed. And from that readiness, everything else can grow. Once the ethical foundation is in place, the next step is concentration. This is the training of attention. It's the ability to place your mind on one object and keep it there, moment after moment, without being pulled away by distraction. In the modern world, concentration is rare. We're trained in distraction. Our devices are designed to fragment our attention. We've become accustomed to a mental life that is constantly jumping, constantly scanning, constantly looking for the next stimulation. This isn't a moral failing. It's just the environment we've created. But it has consequences. A mind that cannot concentrate cannot see deeply. It schemes the surface of experience, grabbing snippets, moving on. It never stays long enough to understand anything fully. The Buddha compared the concentrated mind to a still pool of water. When the water is still, you can see all the way to the bottom. You can see the pebbles, the plants, the fish moving. When the water is agitated, you see only the surface. You can't know what's underneath. Our minds are usually agitated. Thoughts ripple across the surface. Emotions stir up sediment. We catch glimpses of what's below, but never a clear, steady view. Concentration is the practice of letting the water grow still. Not by force, but by patient, persistent attention. We start with something simple. The breath. Just the feeling of breathing. In. Out. In. Out. The mind wanders. That's what minds do. When you notice it's wandered, you gently bring it back. That's it. That's the whole practice. Wandering. Noticing. Returning. Over and over. People often think they're bad at meditation because their minds wander. But the wandering isn't the problem. The problem is not noticing. The wandering is natural. The noticing is the skill. And the returning is the training. Each time you notice and return, you're strengthening a mental muscle. The muscle of attention. The muscle of choice. You're teaching your mind that it doesn't have to follow every impulse, every thought, every distraction. It can choose where to place its attention. And that choice, repeated thousands of times, becomes a habit. A habit of freedom. A nature photographer spent months in the wilderness, capturing images of landscapes, animals, light. He was patient, willing to wait hours for the perfect moment. But when he returned to the city, that patience disappeared. He would scroll through social media compulsively, check his email dozens of times a day, flit from task to task without completing anything. He noticed the contrast and it bothered him. In the wilderness, he was calm and focused. In the city, he was scattered and anxious. What was the difference? He realized that in the wilderness, there was nothing to do but wait. The light would change when it changed. The animals would appear when they appeared. He had no choice but to be present. In the city, there was always something to do, always another stimulation, always another demand. His attention was constantly being pulled in a dozen directions. So he created a practice. Every morning, before checking his phone, before looking at email, he would sit for 30 minutes and simply watch his breath. He wasn't trying to achieve anything. He was just practicing being present, the way he practiced in the wilderness. At first it was hard. His mind rebelled. It wanted stimulation. But he kept at it. Day after day. And slowly something shifted. The quality of his attention began to change. He found he could work for longer periods without checking his phone. He found he could listen to people without interrupting. He found he could eat a meal without also scrolling. He hadn't changed his environment. He had changed his mind. He had trained his attention. And that training carried over into everything else. There was a schoolteacher who had been in the classroom for 30 years. She loved her students, loved her subject. But she noticed something troubling. She would be teaching a lesson, fully engaged, and then a thought would arise, a worry about a meeting after school, a memory of something a parent said, and suddenly she was somewhere else. The students were still there, her voice was still speaking, but she was gone. Lost in thought. She would snap back minutes later, not knowing what she had just said. The students hadn't noticed. But she had. And it bothered her. She was spending her days somewhere other than where she actually was. She started a small practice. Every time she picked up a piece of chalk to write on the board, she would pause for just one breath. Feel the chalk in her hand. Feel her feet on the floor. Feel the next breath coming in. Then she would write. That's all. One breath. One pause. Dozens of times a day. Over months, those pauses accumulated. They created gaps in the autopilot. Moments of choice. She found herself more present during lessons, more responsive to students, more alive in her own classroom. The chalk became her anchor. A tiny object, a tiny pause, a tiny return to now. This is concentration practice. Not just on a cushion. Not just in silence. But in the middle of life. In the middle of teaching. In the middle of eating. In the middle of conversation. Learning to return. Learning to be here. Learning that you can choose. The breath is always there. Always available. Always now. It doesn't require special equipment or special conditions. It's the most ordinary thing in the world. And it's the most profound door to freedom. Each time you notice you've wandered and come back, you're strengthening a muscle. The muscle of presence. The muscle of choice. And that muscle, once developed, changes everything. Not because the world changes. Because you do. Because you're finally here to meet it. Now we come to the third part of the training, discernment. This is the wisdom that sees clearly. It's the understanding that arises when the mind is ethical and concentrated. It's not intellectual knowledge. It's direct insight into the nature of experience. What does discernment see? It sees three characteristics of all conditioned phenomena. First, impermanence. Everything that arises passes away. Every feeling, every thought, every sensation, every relationship, every identity, all of it is temporary. Second, unsatisfactoriness. Because everything is temporary, nothing can ultimately satisfy the craving for lasting happiness. Third, not self. Because everything is temporary and unsatisfactory, nothing can be truly owned or controlled. There's nothing solid to hold on to. These aren't philosophical positions to believe. They're observations to verify. When the mind is still and concentrated, you can actually see these characteristics in action. You can watch a feeling arise, last for a moment, and pass away. You can see the subtle dissatisfaction that comes from wanting it to last. You can see that the feeling isn't you, it's just a passing phenomenon in the field of awareness. This seeing is liberating. Why? Because the mind stops grasping. It sees that grasping is pointless, the object is already passing away. It sees that grasping is painful, it creates tension and stress. And it sees that the grasper is just another construction, there's no permanent self that needs to hold on. When grasping stops, suffering stops. Not temporarily. Not partially. Completely. This is what the Buddha called nibbana, the unconditioned. It's not a place you go. It's not a state you achieve. It's what remains when the fires of craving are finally extinguished. There's an old story about a potter who made beautiful vessels. He was known for his skill, his precision, his perfect forms. One day as he was throwing a large vase on his wheel, a tiny crack appeared in the clay. Just a hairline fracture near the base. He stopped the wheel. He looked at the crack. His first impulse was to discard the clay, start over. The crack was a flaw. It ruined the perfection. But something made him pause. He looked more closely. The crack wasn't a mistake. It was just a feature of the clay, a response to the pressure he had applied. It wasn't wrong. It was just what had happened. He kept working. He finished the vase. And when it came out of the kiln, the crack was still there. But now it was part of the vase. It didn't ruin it. It just made it different. Unique. People who bought his pot started to notice. They would ask about the crack. He would tell them the story. And they would say, "That's my favorite part. It makes the vase real." The potter had learned something. Perfection was an idea. The crack was real. And reality, with all its flaws, was more beautiful than any idea could ever be. An elderly woman lost her husband of 50 years. They had been inseparable. After he passed, she wore his wedding ring on a chain around her neck, close to her heart. It was her most precious possession. The only thing she had left of him. One day she lost the ring. It fell somewhere, maybe at the market, maybe on the bus, maybe just on the street. She searched everywhere. She retraced her steps. She asked at lost and found. Nothing. The ring was gone. She was devastated. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. She felt she had lost her husband all over again. The ring was the last tangible connection, and now it was gone. Weeks passed. The grief didn't fade. A friend came to visit and found her still consumed by the loss. The friend sat with her for a while, then asked gently, "Where is your husband now?" The woman pointed to her heart. "He's here. Always here." The friend nodded. "And where was he when you had the ring?" "The same place." Her heart. The friend said, "The ring was just a thing. A beautiful thing. But your husband was never in the ring. He was in you. And he's still in you. The ring being gone doesn't change that." In that moment the woman saw it clearly. She had confused the symbol with the reality. The ring was impermanent. It could be lost. It could be stolen. It could be destroyed. But her love, her memories, the decades of shared life, those weren't in the ring. They were in her. And they couldn't be lost. A businessman built a company from nothing. 30 years of work, sacrifice, sleepless nights. And then, in a single year, it collapsed. Market shifts. Bad decisions. Bad luck. It was gone. He was hollow. He had defined himself by that company. He was the founder, the CEO, the man who built something from nothing. Without it, who was he? He spent months in depression, barely leaving his house. One day his teenage son came to him with a question about a school project. The son needed help understanding something the father knew well. The father explained it. The son listened. They talked for an hour. After the son left, the father realized something. In that hour, he hadn't thought about the company. He hadn't thought about the failure. He had just been present, useful, connected. The company was gone. But he was still here. Still able to teach. Still able to love. Still able to be a father. The company was a thing he had built. But it was never who he was. The failure stripped away the illusion. And what remained was more real than anything he had lost. This is the work of discernment. Seeing through our attachments. Recognizing what is real and what is not. Understanding that the crack, the loss, the failure, these are not mistakes. They are just what happens. And when we see clearly, we can rest in what is, rather than constantly fighting for what we wish would be. The leaf in your hand is already cracked. Already fading. Already passing. And that's okay. That's the nature of leaves. Your peace is not in making it last. Your peace is in seeing it clearly, holding it gently, and letting it go when it's time. This brings us back to where we started, the question of purpose. If everything is impermanent, if nothing can ultimately satisfy, if there's no solid self to protect and promote, then what's the point? Why do anything? Why get out of bed in the morning? This is the question that haunts the modern seeker. And it's the question the Buddha answers with his handful of leaves. The point isn't to achieve something permanent. The point isn't to build something that lasts. The point is to live with awareness, with integrity, with kindness, right now, in this moment. The point is to stop adding to the world's suffering and start contributing to its peace. The point is to train the mind so thoroughly that even in the face of death, even in the face of loss, even in the face of the inevitable dissolution of everything we love, we are not shaken. That's a purpose worth having. Not because it leads to some future reward, but because it transforms the quality of this very moment. It makes life livable. It makes love possible. It makes death manageable. The Buddha didn't teach nihilism. He taught the opposite. He taught that because nothing lasts, everything matters. Every moment is an opportunity. Every choice has consequences. Every act of kindness ripples outward in ways we can't see. The universe may have no inherent purpose. But you do. You get to choose. And the choice you make in this moment, to pay attention, to be kind, to let go, that choice is your purpose. Not someday. Now. There was a gardener who tended a rock garden. Not plants, just rocks. Stones of different sizes, colors, textures, arranged in patterns that shifted with the light. Visitors would come and ask, why rocks? Why not flowers? Why not vegetables? The gardener would smile and say, because rocks don't die. But that wasn't the whole truth. The truth was, the gardener had once loved flowers. Had loved them passionately. Had spent decades cultivating roses, orchids, rare blooms. And then a blight came. Wiped out everything in a single season. The gardener was devastated. All that work, all that beauty, gone. After that, the gardener couldn't bear to plant anything that would die. So the rocks. They wouldn't die. They wouldn't change. They would just be there, dependable, eternal. But one day a child came to the garden. A little girl, maybe 5 years old. She looked at the rocks for a long time. Then she looked up at the gardener and asked, where are the flowers? The gardener started to give the usual answer. But something in the child's eyes stopped it. The child wasn't asking about horticulture. She was asking about life. About beauty. About the willingness to love what dies. That night the gardener couldn't sleep. The question echoed, where are the flowers? The rocks were safe, but they were also dead. They had never been alive. The garden was a monument to fear, not to love. The next morning the gardener went to the nursery and bought seeds. Dozens of packets. Annuals, perennials, wildflowers. Came home and started digging. The rocks were moved aside. The soil was turned. The seeds were planted. It was terrifying. The blight could come again. The drought could come. The deer could come. Everything could die. But that was the point. To love what dies. To tend what fades. To care for what cannot last. The gardener had found a new purpose. Not safety. Not permanence. Just the simple act of planting, watering, waiting, hoping. The garden was alive again. And so was the gardener. A nurse worked in a hospice. Every day she cared for people who were dying. She helped them bathe, helped them eat, helped them manage pain. She sat with them when they were scared. She held their hands when they couldn't speak. A friend once asked her how she did it. Isn't it depressing? They all die. Nothing you do makes any difference in the end. The nurse thought about this. She thought about a patient from years ago, a woman in her 40s with cancer. The woman had been angry, bitter, terrified. She pushed everyone away. But over weeks, something shifted. The nurse kept showing up. Kept being kind. Kept sitting in silence when there was nothing to say. One night the woman said to her, "You know, I used to think my life was about what I accomplished. My career. My house. My things. But lying here, none of that matters. What matters is that you're here. That you stayed." She died 2 days later. Peaceful. Held. The nurse looked at her friend and said, "You asked if anything I do makes a difference. I don't know if it makes a difference in the end. But it makes a difference in the moment. And the moment is all there is. The moment is where we live. This is the insight. The purpose isn't to defeat death. The purpose isn't to build something that outlasts the universe. The purpose is to show up, fully, for this life. For this breath. For this person right in front of you. The gardener planted flowers knowing they would die. The nurse held hands knowing they would let go. And in that knowing, their actions became more precious, not less. Because they were real. Because they were chosen. Because they were given freely, without the promise of permanence. The universe has no purpose. But you do. You get to choose. And the choice you make in this moment, to love what dies, to hold what fades, to care for what cannot last, that choice is your purpose. Not someday. Now. So here we are at the end of this reflection. We've walked through forests and gardens, met potters and nurses, accountants and musicians. We've explored the Buddha's handful of leaves and sat with the question of purpose in a purposeless universe. What remains? Just this, your own life. Your own breath. Your own choice. The teachings are just maps. They point the way. But the walking is yours. No one can tell you what meaning to make, what purpose to choose. That's your work. That's your freedom. And it's also your responsibility. Because the choice is unavoidable. Even choosing not to choose is a choice. The only question is whether you make it consciously or unconsciously. The Buddha's invitation is to make it consciously. To sit with yourself and ask, what really matters? What do I actually value? What kind of person do I want to be? Not for the applause. Just for the quality of this one life. The answers may surprise you. They may not match what your culture expects. But they will be yours. And that alignment between your choices and your deepest values. That's a peace nothing can disturb. Because when you live from that place, you're no longer seeking meaning outside yourself. You're not waiting for the universe to validate you. You're making sense of it now, through your own intentional action. A master calligrapher was teaching a student. The student had practiced for months trying to perfect a single character. The character for mind. But every time, something was slightly off. One day in frustration, he made a wild stroke across the paper. A mistake. A blot. But as he looked at it, something caught his attention. The mistake was alive. Imperfect, but real. He showed it to the master. The master looked at it for a long time. "This is your best work." The student was confused. "But it's a mistake." The master said, "It's the first time you forgot about perfect. The first time you just drew. The first time you trusted your hand instead of your idea of what the character should be. That's the mind. Not perfect. Just present." The student had been trying to become someone. To meet a standard. And in that trying, he had lost what he was trying to express. When he finally let go, when he just moved the brush without worrying about the outcome, the mind expressed itself naturally. Imperfectly. Beautifully. This is the whole path. The letting go. The trusting. The showing up without agenda. That's the handful of leaves. Not the forest. Just this. Just now. Just you. And it's enough. It has always been enough.